for an hour in the dark and refused to lie down after a lengthy tuck-in, hitting his head against the headboard, which we could hear from our bedroom on the other side of the wall. My insomnia reached an all-time high as I whispered chronic prayers for rescue and peace. Later that fall, on a family trip from Florida, Cade refused to get out of the rental car at the airport. Concerned we might miss our flight home, I ran around the parking garage in search of a wheelchair, finally finding one 3 parking sections away. When we tried to gently shift him into the wheelchair, Cade grabbed onto the car door handle with a death grip and shook violently, eyes locked in a silent scream. He wouldn't budge, and if we didn't leave soon, we wouldn't make it home. We reluctantly left Gabe and Cade behind and scrambled towards security, hoping to make it to our flight before they closed the gate. On our way toward the concourse, we all cried and argued, living out a real-time trauma. One child declared, "I hate Cade," while the other admonished, "You don't mean that." In that moment, I knew our reality had shifted. Years of patience and restrained anger bubbled over, ruined by yet another uncontrollable circumstance. Fortunately, Cade relented, and while he and Gabe barely made the evening flight, the damage was done. Our family would recover, but we would never be the same. After we arrived home, we went through months of behavioral therapy and family counseling. We made multiple attempts to schedule an MRI for Cade, hoping to discover whether something had changed neurologically. Every doctor refused the exploratory procedure because Cade would have to be put under to lie still. Because he has Down syndrome, his airways are smaller than those of most typical kids his age, which creates a risk for asphyxiation under anesthesia. In addition, because Cade is nonverbal, he would have limited ability to alert us if anything went wrong. Each of these doctors refused to put him under for an exploratory procedure, telling us they'd only sedate Cade if it was completely necessary. It was a dark season, and I never wrote about it online or spoke about it in public. I hid everything to protect Cade, but inside, I was spiraling in grief. In many ways, I identified with Cade. As he spiraled, I spiraled. Desperate to understand what he could not explain. Desperate to comfort his fears and anxieties, even as he was pushing me away. Sometimes, I glimpsed a momentary breakthrough when I knelt close, whispered, and waited. "Mommy loves Cade. Do you want a hug?" And in those patient, quiet moments, Cade would eventually start bawling and let me hold him. I caught a glimpse of his nonverbal agony, deeper than his defiant exterior. When he wept, I saw him fully. I also saw the rest of us fully, breaking under the weight of change and loss, struggling with our limits to help him. Cade gifted us with honesty, no filter by which to pretend. We were losing our son, and this was the kind of loss I'd never experienced. It was one thing to get a Down syndrome diagnosis at birth and experience the ambiguity that comes with an unknown childhood. Would Cade be able to talk, run, read, fall in love? After months of surrender in the first year of life, we rallied and learned to live into a new normal, even though it was far different from anything we were prepared for. 2 decades later, this was a second loss. To know that Cade's engaging smile was fading, the one I'd grown to love and rarely saw anymore, felt too great to bear. It was a loss so gradual and extended I almost couldn't perceive it. Over time, it became the grief of 1,000 tiny cuts. Every interaction, every day, every eggshell we danced on to keep going. One afternoon, I went for a walk in the woods. Cade had had another outburst days before, and the stress of that one, along with all the other outbursts, weighed heavily on our marriage. Gabe and I argued constantly about how to best parent him, nerves frayed and on edge. Our teenagers were exhausted and began to avoid any attempt to spend time together as a family. We tried our best to shield Joy, our youngest daughter we had adopted 2 years prior at the age of 5, who also has Down syndrome, but she saw enough to know that Cade was sad. I walked in silence in those woods, listening to the sound of crunching leaves underfoot, tears streaming down my cheeks. I finally spoke, begging God through tears, "Are you going to lift this?" I felt no end in sight, full of exhaustion and devoid of hope. Within moments, I heard in my spirit, "Not yet. But I'll be here for as many wailing walks as you need." This wasn't the answer I wanted. In my plan, God was supposed to bring rescue and relief. Wasn't he the one who makes our burden light? How long must we sustain this endless loop of grief? We were 18 months into a new reality since the cookies and the broken glass, and I was languishing. I didn't want to keep walking.